At the end of this book, Chomsky stops arguing about policies. He stops arguing about Iraq, or Latin America, or NATO. And he asks a question that is much older and much darker. What happens when the pursuit of power becomes more important than the survival of the species? This is why the title matters, hegemony or survival. Not as metaphor, not as rhetoric, as a literary choice. Chapter 9 is where everything converges. The entire argument of the book tightens into one point. The modern imperial system is generating threats that it cannot control. And the greatest danger is not that leaders are insane. The danger is that the system is rational in the service of irrational ends. This is what Chomsky calls a kind of logical illogicality. Policies that make sense inside the doctrine of dominance, but become catastrophic from the standpoint of human life. First of all, nuclear weapons. Chomsky reminds us that the nuclear threat did not disappear. It was not solved. It was only normalized. These weapons still exist, on alert, embedded in doctrines of first strike, missile deterrence, and escalation control. And the terrifying truth is that nuclear war does not require intent. It requires mistake, false alarm, misinterpretation, an accident, a radar glitch, a misread signal, a moment of panic, a computer hack, human survival balanced on contingency. Chomsky's point is simple. If the probability is not zero and the consequences are total, then the policy is insane. And yet, the machine continues, because dominance demands it. Hegemony becomes leadership. Domination becomes stability. Force becomes humanitarianism. This is the moral inversion, at the heart of empire. But nuclear danger is not the only threat. The second existential crisis is ecological. Climate collapse is slower, but no less terminal. And while Chomsky seems to buy into global warming and climate change, I tend to think it is a scam designed to control us further. But even if we dispute climate change as a political question, the deeper point still stands. We are living in an age where ecological strain is undeniable, where communities face poisoned water, where chemical spills devastate entire towns, where industrial toxins enter the food chain, and where war itself becomes one of the greatest engines of environmental destruction, not to mention Alex Jones's talk of frogs turning gay. These are not partisan abstractions. They are physical realities, and they raise the same fundamental question. Can a civilization survive while treating its own life support systems as expendable? The issue is not which ecological symptom one emphasizes. The issue is the institutional logic that produces them. For example, the specific problem can be debated. The pattern cannot. A system built to externalize costs will eventually externalize life itself. Chomsky argues, whatever the real ecological issues are, it is not a technical problem, it is a political problem. Because the institutions that govern the world are structured around short-term power and short-term profit, not long-term survival. Corporations externalized costs. States compete for advantage. Restraint is punished. We can see this same logic today, even in the race for artificial intelligence. Elon Musk and other leaders openly admit AI could become an existential threat. And yet, that does not stop them. Because the doctrine is the same. If they don't build it first, someone else will. So even when the risk is acknowledged, the machine continues, because dominance demands it. And so, even as catastrophe becomes visible, the system cannot turn, because turning would require limits. An empire cannot accept limits. Manufactured consent. Now here is one of Chomsky's most important points. These policies do not persist by force alone. They persist through ideology, through propaganda, through manufactured consent. The public is told that interventions are democracy promotion, that militarization is defense, that dominance is peacekeeping, and other forms of doublespeak. And gradually, even the managers begin to believe their own stories. A closed moral universe forms, where escalation feels like necessity, and dissent feels like irresponsibility. So the system drifts, procedurally, towards catastrophe, while imagining itself benevolent. A closed moral universe forms, where escalation feels like necessity, and dissent feels like irresponsibility. So the system drifts, procedurally, towards catastrophe, while imagining itself benevolent. And so the final argument becomes unavoidable. The pursuit of global hegemony in a world of nuclear weapons and ecological limits is not simply immoral. It is suicidal. Even if every actor believes they are acting rationally, the structure produces irrational outcomes. Because the highest priority is not survival, it is dominance. And dominance cannot tolerate equality, cannot tolerate independence, cannot tolerate restraint. This is why Chomsky insists the choice is literal. But Chomsky does not end in despair. He ends with responsibility. The future is not written. These are decisions. These are structures. And structures can be changed. The only question is whether democratic publics awaken before the system closes forever. Hope lies not in the planners, not in the strategists, not in the managers of empire. Hope lies in popular movements, in grassroots resistance, in moral clarity, in people who refuse to accept that domination is normal, in people who insist that another world is possible. So perhaps the deepest warning of hegemony or survival is this: the road to destruction is not only paved with hatred. It is paved with procedure, with doctrine, with rational planning, in the service of irrational ends. The greatest danger is not the villain, it is the administrator. Not conquest, but inevitability. And the question is not whether the leaders have good intentions. The question is whether a system built on dominance can survive its own logic. That is the choice. Not tomorrow, not someday, now. Hegemony or survival. Thank you for watching. If you'd like more chapter-by-chapter videos on Chomsky, Hayek, and the structures of modern power, please like and subscribe. I'll see you in the next one.